Hello and welcome to another Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm reviewing the film The Voice of Hind, Rejab, directed by Kaouther Ben Hania. This is a very upsetting film. It's really distressing. Of course it's a true story. It was quite high profile. I assume that you know the ending, so I am going to give spoilers. But if you don't know the ending, turn off if you don't want to know the story. It's the story of a 5-year-old girl who's trapped in a car with her dead family around her, and she is eventually shot by the Israeli forces. And the film is based around her phone call requesting help. For me, this is one of those films that everyone should watch. It's something that everyone should know about, and I think film can be an effective way of communicating something like this. It has big name producers on the film, so I think that really helps. You might describe this as kind of a dramatized documentary. It uses the real recorded audio of the girl who was on the phone, and it's combined with actors playing the role of the Red Crescent volunteers who coordinate with the appropriate authorities trying to get an ambulance to go and pick up the girl. All of the film is set inside the office of the volunteers. It doesn't dramatise the shooting. It's such an upsetting story. It's a horrible experience, but really essential, at least for me. Werner Herzog said that the artist must not avert their eyes. And I really think there's a truth in this. I really believe that art can't exist without acknowledging the existence of trauma. It also reminds me of what Adorno said, that to write poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have any more poetry. It doesn't mean that poetry has to be always about trauma, but I think it does mean that art has to exist within the context of real events. This is why I think film, cinema needs to have stories like this. This is a really well-made film. Even when you know the outcome, you're still hoping that it might be different. It did feel authentic, this combination of the real voice and the actors. I can understand why some people might not want to watch this. It does feel a little bit like torture, perhaps even misery porn, like the fascination with watching car crashes. I do think that ethically there is a legitimate question about the use of Hind's real voice. Throughout the film, I did feel that it was problematic using her real voice and mixing it with the actors. It felt really morbid. It feels really weird making actors have conversations with a little girl that's now dead in such tragic circumstances. I did have mixed feelings at the end of this film because it did feel like it crossed the line and it just didn't really feel right. But I saw some interviews with Ben Hania afterwards, and she said that she wanted to avoid a documentary that explains what happened. She wanted to reproduce, to create it almost in the present moment as if it's happening now. And that in this sense, it didn't feel right having an actor doing it. And I do think this kind of makes sense. I do think it crosses a line. It's horrible, it's morbid, but I do think it's necessary. As one might expect, there has been some pushback on the film. The Times of Israel called it propaganda and accused it of being a Hamas presentation of the way that contact with the authorities works in these situations. And it claimed that the bureaucracy isn't down to the Israelis. I have my own views on this, so I'm very sympathetic to the film. I do think it's necessary. But I think we need to acknowledge that it's a complex situation. This is a war. It's not black and white. I'm a pacifist actually, so it is black and white to me. But I can understand why this might feel like propaganda to someone on the Israeli side of the conflict. War is complex. We can acknowledge that this isn't addressed really in the film. It is seen purely from the Palestinian perspective. That said, the focus is on the story, which is factually true. The volunteers in the call centre wouldn't have set out the subtleties of the conflict in dealing with this terrible situation. So personally, I do think this is an authentic representation of the experience for these volunteers. I do recommend this film, but it is very upsetting and I wouldn't blame anyone for not watching it. But if you can watch it, you definitely should. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.